Hey, what's up, guys? It's spooky. Wow, it's already October. Time is flying by. But tonight's video is True Scary Stories. It's about 4 stories I have for you tonight. And since we're in October, going forward, I think the videos are going to be more Halloween, fall, autumn, cornfield, that kind of stuff. And I might sprinkle in some surprises here and there. But enough of me yapping. Let's get into these stories. Now I'm 27 and live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's not a great place, but it's what I can afford right now. I've been working overtime at my job just to stay ahead of my bills, so getting home at 10 or 11 at night has become normal to me. On this night, it was just past 11:30 when I pulled into the parking lot. It had rained earlier, so everything had that damp smell to it. My building was quiet. Most of the windows were dark, except for a few TVs flickering behind the curtains. I parked in my usual spot, grabbed my bag, and headed for my unit on the 2nd floor. I remember fishing for my keys as I walked up the stairs. My keyring had a little flashlight on it, and I used it automatically to light the lock up for me to see. That's when I noticed something was wrong. The door to my apartment was cracked open about 2 inches. I always lock it behind me, deadbolt and chain. It's a habit I've had since college. I stood there for a second, hard hammering, just staring at the gap. Nothing looked disturbed from the outside, but the door being open was all wrong. At first I thought maybe I'd been careless and left it open when I left that morning. But even on my most distracted days, I never leave it unlatched, not in this neighborhood. I started to reach for the handle, then stopped. Every instinct in me screamed not to go inside. If someone was in there, I'd be walking straight into them. I backed away slowly, glancing at the neighboring doors. The unit next to mine belonged to an older guy named Tom. We weren't friends, but we said hello enough times that I felt like I could knock on his door without it being too weird. When he opened up, I must have looked scared, because his face changed immediately. I told him my door was open, and asked if he noticed anything out there. He hesitated, then said, "About 20 minutes ago, I heard loud banging on your door. I figured maybe you forgot your keys or someone was visiting. I peeked out but did not see anybody." That made my stomach flip. If the door had been open for 20 minutes, whoever had opened it might still be in there. Tom stepped aside and let me in. His apartment was a mirror of mine, but neater, with a faint smell of coffee. We just started talking about calling the police when it happened. From the other side of the wall, my wall, came a heavy, deliberate bang. Then another. The sound of a fist, or maybe a boot hitting the drywall. Tom's eyes went wide. He grabbed his phone and locked his deadbolt. We both stood there listening. The banging came again, but softer, like whoever was in my unit knew we were hearing them. He dialed 911 and explained what was happening. The dispatcher told us to stay put, keep the door locked, and wait for the officers. It felt like forever, but was probably only 8 or 9 minutes before we heard footsteps on the stairs and someone calling police. 2 officers showed up at Tom's door. 1 male, 1 female, both with their hands near their weapons. Tom let them in and pointed at my apartment. They did not hesitate. They went straight over, guns drawn, and disappeared inside. We went outside and tried to peek in through my door. Their flashlights moved through my apartment like beams of pale light. I heard muffled shouting, then a scuffle. One of the officers called out for backup. A 3rd patrol car pulled up. Another officer ran inside. After a few minutes, they emerged from my apartment, leading a man out in handcuffs. I felt like I was in a movie. The man was wearing work clothes, his shirt damp with sweat. I recognized him immediately. It was Mark, the leasing manager for the complex. He's the guy who hands out notices and fixes small maintenance issues. Always polite, always chatty. Now he looked blank, like he was somewhere else. One of the officers stayed behind to talk to me. She asked if I knew him, if he had any reason to be in my unit. I said absolutely not. She nodded grimly and told me they found him hiding in my bedroom closet. I could barely process what she told me next. He'd been crouched there with a battery-powered sawzall, rolls of packaging tape, and an old handheld video camera. According to police, he'd been breaking into women's apartments in the complex using a master key. Mostly he filmed them while they were out or asleep. But in my case, they believed he planned on going further. Why else bring the tools and tape? I think that's what shook me the most. If I'd walked straight in like usual, if I ignored the open door and just assumed I'd left it that way, I'd have been face to face with him in my own home. The complex's corporate office called me the next day, offering a year free rent as an apology. I refused. There was no way I was staying there another night. Instead, I demanded they pay my moving expenses and storage fees until I found a new place. After some back and forth, they agreed. I'm renting this now from a small, quiet house I'm renting outside the city. It's tiny, but it feels like a fortress compared to that apartment. I have new locks, cameras, motion lights, the whole works. I still get shaky thinking about that night. The sound of that banging through the wall while we stood there in Tom's apartment is burned into my brain. It wasn't random noise. He knew we were there. The case against him is still moving through the courts. They found dozens of tapes in his unit, some dating back years. My video was never recorded, but knowing how close it came to something worse is enough to keep me up some nights. I'm sharing this because I keep thinking about how small decisions matter. If I'd gone in, if Tom had not let me in, if I ignored the noise, this could have ended very differently. I've learned the hard way. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, even if it's inconvenient or embarrassing, step away and call for help. I'll probably never live in an apartment again, but if I do, I'll never forget that a simple lock isn't always protection when the wrong person has a key. I was 18 when this happened, working the night shift at McDonald's. At that point in my life, I had one big goal: save up enough money to buy a Dodge Challenger. Every paycheck, every overtime shift, I told myself I was one step closer. It was a Thursday night, a little past midnight, when the lobby finally cleared out. The three of us on duty locked the front doors and started the usual cleanup routine. I was on trash duty, which I hated more than anything. The dumpsters were out back against the tree line, and the lighting in that area was terrible. One dim floodlight barely lit the parking lot, but the woods behind the store were pitch black. I grabbed the first two bags and tried to move them quickly. The smell was already awful, and the longer I lingered, the more it felt like the shadows behind those trees were pressing into me. I'd been out there enough times to know it wasn't just my imagination. Sometimes you could hear rustling back there, like stray animals or people cutting through the woods. I hoisted one of the bags into the dumpster when something caught my eye. A light. At first it was faint, like a star you almost miss, but it was moving, bobbing through the darkness between the trees. I froze, watching it get closer, brighter, until I could make out the rhythm. It wasn't a car or a train. It was the jerking, uneven swing of a flashlight. And whoever was holding it was running straight toward me. For a half second I stood there, thinking about the scene in Get Out, when the guy runs full speed out of the dark. My stomach dropped. I hurled the last bag into the dumpster and bolted back into the building. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost, because my coworkers jumped when I ran through the back door. "What the hell's wrong with you?" one of them asked me. Before I could answer, the entire steel door shook violently. Someone, had slammed into it with enough force to make the frame rattle. We all froze. Then came the banging, hard, frantic, full-body hits against the metal. The handle twisted back and forth, jerking like whoever was outside was trying to tear it open. Thank God that door locked automatically when it closed. We did not stay near it. We ran to the front of the store, but as soon as we stopped moving, so did the pounding. The silence wasn't comforting. The front of that McDonald's was nothing but giant glass panes. If the person outside had enough strength to nearly bust the back door, it wouldn't take much to shatter one of those windows up front. We ducked behind the counter, peering through the fryers toward the lobby, but there was nothing. Just the faint glow of the parking lot lights bleeding through the glass. One of my coworkers, a girl named Marissa, had her phone out, recording. I guess she thought if something happened, at least there'd be evidence. I pulled out my phone and called my older brother. He lived about 15 minutes away, and I did not know who else to trust. The three of us sat in a cluster near the registers, whispering and waiting. My brother answered angrily, but the second he heard my voice, he knew I wasn't messing around. He told me to stay put. Then he grabbed a couple of his friends and drove over right away. Those 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Every creak of the building, every car that passed on the main road, made my chest tighten. The banging never started up again, but the absence of it was almost worse. Whoever it was vanished into the night, and we did not know if they were gone or just waiting. Finally, headlights swept across the parking lot, and I saw my brother's beat-up car pull in, followed by 2 of his buddies' cars. They came inside, checked on us, and then insisted on walking each of us to our cars. It was almost 1:30 a.m. by then. I felt safer with them there, until we stepped outside. The first thing I noticed was the crunch of glass under my shoes. My car window shattered. Not just mine either. Marissa's and Devin's cars were wrecked the same way. Their driver's side windows smashed in. Then I saw what was inside. A dead bird sat in the middle of each front seat. Not just tossed in, but placed, wings folded against their sides like they'd been set down deliberately. I remember backing away and almost tripping over myself. Who even thinks to do something like that? Breaking into cars is one thing, but this felt personal, like a message. My brother cursed under his breath and told us to stick together while they checked out the rest of the lot. But it was empty. No white vans, no figures hiding by the tree line. Whoever had done it was long gone. We called the cops, but the officer who showed up barely took it seriously. He wrote up a report, told us it was probably some messed up prank, and left it at that. McDonald's corporate did not do much better either. When we asked about covering the damage, they basically shrugged. That's what insurance is for, they told us. And I was furious. I couldn't believe they expected 3 minimum wage employees to just eat that cost when it happened on their property. Between the deductibles and the hassle, it ended up being more trouble than it was worth. That was the night I decided to quit. If the company couldn't even stand behind us after something like that, then it wasn't a place worth staying. A few weeks later, I got an apprenticeship with a carpenter I met through one of my brother's friends. The pay was better, the work made sense, and for the first time, I actually felt like I was building towards something. It took me another year of long days and saving, but I finally got my dream car, a Dodge Challenger, just like I always wanted. Every time I start it up, I think back to that night. The glass crunching under my shoes, the twisted sight of those birds in the seats. It's still the scariest thing of my life, not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. If that back door hadn't locked automatically, if I hesitated a little longer at the dumpster, I don't know where I'd be right now. I was 22 when this happened, driving back from my girlfriend's place late on a Friday night. She lived about an hour away, and I had an early shift the next morning, so I left around midnight. The interstate was mostly empty, just a few semis here and there, the kind of night where you almost feel alone in the world, if that makes sense. About halfway through the drive, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. At first I did not think much of it, but after a few miles, the car stayed right behind me, way closer than normal for an empty highway. Then blue and red lights flicked on from the dash. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a regular squad car though. It was a black sedan, no markings, no spotlight on the side. Just a small light bar suctioned to the windshield. I'd heard stories about unmarked police cars, but something about this did not feel right. Still, I did not want to make a scene. I pulled over onto the shoulder, put my car in park, and rolled the window down halfway. My heart was hammering as I watched the guy get out. The first thing I noticed was the flashlight. He shined it right in my eyes, making it impossible to see his face. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just dark pants and a jacket. No badge on the chest, no patches. On his hip, I caught the silhouette of a handgun. "License and registration," he said. I hesitated. "Can I see your badge?" He shifted the light, but not enough to see his face. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. License, registration, now." Every instinct in me screamed something was off. Real cops don't talk that way, and they don't get mad when you ask to see ID. My hands were shaking as I said, "I'm calling 911 to confirm you're an officer." The change in his tone was immediate. "Step out of the car," he barked, yanking on my door handle. The window rattled, but the door stayed shut. I locked it without even thinking when I pulled over. Adrenaline took over. I threw the car in drive and floored it. Gravel spat from the shoulder as my tires screeched back onto the highway. I did not look back, just gripped the wheel and focused on the road ahead. Within seconds, his headlights swelled in my rearview again. He was chasing me, still flashing those blue and reds. My speedometer crept past 90, then 100. The road blurred. My hands were slick with sweat, but I could not let up. I dialed 911 on speaker, my voice cracking as I explained what was happening. The dispatcher was calm, asking for my location and description of the car. I shouted it all out, glancing in my mirror every few seconds. He was still back there, swerving like he was trying to get me to spin out. "Keep driving," the dispatcher told me. "Do not stop until you see one of our marked units. We've got officers on the way." The next 10 minutes felt like hours. My gas gauge dropped, my foot pressed flat against the floor. At one point he pulled up alongside me, his face lit briefly by my headlights. Dark baseball cap, clenched low, eyes locked straight ahead. He motioned for me to pull over, but I kept going. Then, like a miracle, I saw flashing lights ahead. Real ones this time. Bright strobes on the roof of a cruiser parked across the median. The dispatcher told me to take the next exit, where officers will be waiting. When I finally pulled off, 2 marked patrol cars were waiting with their lights going. I slammed on the brakes, nearly crying with relief as I threw it into park. The fake cop did not follow me onto the ramp. He blew past the exit and disappeared into the night. The officer swarmed my car, guns drawn at first, until I screamed what happened. Once they realized, their expressions changed. They lowered their weapons and asked me to describe everything: the car, the man, the fake lights. One of them shook his head. He did the right thing calling 911. We've had a couple of reports like this along the interstate. The reality of what almost happened did not hit me until later. If I'd stepped out like he demanded, I don't know where I'd be right now. My body ended up shaking so badly I could hardly sign the statement they had me fill out. They never caught the guy, at least not to my knowledge. A few weeks later, I read an article online about similar incidents in nearby states. People being pulled over by unmarked cars, sometimes robbed, sometimes worse. I don't drive at night as much anymore, and when I do, I have rules. If an unmarked car tries to pull me over, I don't stop unless I'm in a well-lit public area, and I always call 911 to confirm before rolling down a window. That night changed how I see the road. I used to think the scariest part about driving at midnight was falling asleep at the wheel. Now I know sometimes the real danger comes from the car behind you, the one pretending to protect you. I just finished a closing shift and was dragging on the drive home when I decided to run my car through the 24-hour wash a couple of blocks from my apartment. Salt from the roads had left the paint looking white and chalky, and it was one of those little things I'd been putting off for weeks. It was almost midnight, and the lot was empty when I pulled in. The place had 3 bays, 2 for self-service and 1 for automatic tunnel. The only light came from a flickering bulb above the entrance, buzzing like a bug zapper. I swiped my card, the gate arm lifted, and I rolled inside. The cycle started like normal. A jet of water hit my windshield, followed by the brushes swinging down from the ceiling. Foam spread across the glass until everything outside looked blurred. I reclined my seat and let the machine do its work, already thinking about how quickly I could crawl into bed once I got home. Then everything cut out. The brushes froze mid-spin, the spray nozzles hissed once and went silent. A second later, both steel bay doors slammed shut with a metallic thud, sealing me in. At first I thought maybe the place had lost power. That's when I saw movement in the side mirror. A shape drifted past the edge of my taillights. Not another car, not an employee, someone on foot. Slow steps echoed off the concrete walls, circling. The shadow slipped out of view, then reappeared on the passenger side. I leaned toward the wheel, straining to see through the soap-smeared glass. Whoever it was, they were not in a hurry. They dragged something metallic across the floor as they walked. Sparks flicked when it scraped against the tracks the roller sat on. My first instinct was to honk the horn, but the idea of letting whoever was out there know how panicked I was made my hands clench harder around the steering wheel. I slid out my phone and dialed 911. I was whispering to the dispatcher what was happening, that I was trapped inside the automatic bay, that someone was outside, circling my car with what looked like a crowbar. She kept her voice steady, asking me for the address and telling me to stay inside no matter what. As she spoke, the figure came right up to the passenger window. He leaned down until his face was level with mine, separated only by glass, streaked with water and soap. His features were pale, stretched tight, eyes wide open like he hadn't blinked in minutes. The metal bar in his hand tapped once against the window, then again, harder. Each hit echoed inside the car. loud enough to drown out the dispatcher's voice. I ducked lower in my seat. The man disappeared from view. A few seconds later, my car shook as the handle on the rear door jerked violently. Then the driver's side, then the hatchback. He was trying every point of entry, one after the other. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered to the dispatcher that he was trying to get in. She told me officers were already on their way and to hang tight, but he wasn't giving up. Glass shattered behind me as the rear passenger window imploded. I screamed and lunged forward, shards raining onto the seats. A hand reached through, groping for the lock. I slammed the shifter into drive and floored it. The front bay door groaned under the impact, metal shrieking as my bumper crushed into it. For a second it held, then bent upward enough for me to duck under. I burst out into the night air, tires squealing as I shot across the empty lot. I did not stop until I hit a gas station across the street. I pulled up under the canopy lights, shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The dispatcher stayed online until 2 patrol cars rolled in minutes later. The officers searched the wash, but did not find him. All they recovered was the crowbar lying in a puddle of water, and the footprints he left circling my car. I gave a statement. They told me this wasn't the first time someone had reported strange activity at that location. Vandalisms, attempted break-ins, people loitering in the bays, but no one had ever been caught in the act. Insurance covered the window, but it took weeks before I stopped finding tiny slivers of safety glass lodged into the carpet. Even now, if I go through a wash, I can't relax. The sound of the brushes hitting the glass makes me grip the wheel until my knuckles turn white. That night changed something in me. Car washes used to be mindless, just a chore. Now they feel like cages to me. Hey, what's up guys? It's Spooky. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to like it, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, check me out on Patreon. I like to hang out there a lot. And as always, stay safe out there guys, and stay spooky.